was an awesome clear summer day. I had just crossed Shell Creek and started up the hill. At the top of the hill, the road turns to the left with the cut lines on both sides. As I crested the hill, I noticed something big and dark run up on the road. At first, I thought it was a bear, but as I got closer, it got bigger. It took off across the road upright and went down the cut line. Never once did it drop on all fours. I stopped at the cut line and no sign of it. I had co-workers come to the spot and help me look for tracks, but the muskeg on the cut line was spongy and just popped up, and as for the road, it was packed solid from the oil field traffic, so nothing there. No way was it a bear. I'm thinking at least 8 feet tall, and it's something I'll never forget. Childhood encounter near Morley. I told my family I saw Sasquatch, and they told me they saw him too. In 1980, our family lived in Morley, Alberta, Canada, close to the bridge at the school. We had played all throughout that area on motorbikes, making forts in the woods and exploring near the banks of the Elbow River. My older brother was 14 years old, and my sister was about 18 years old, and I was only 10. I remember watching a tall, big figure traverse the foothill behind what is now the community school. What struck me at first, it was very large and moved very fast, though it wasn't running. The figure was dark against the pale straw-coloured hill. I knew immediately it was not a human. It was upright and moved on 2 feet. I also remember it had a funny-shaped head. In my 10-year-old mind, it was as if he had balanced a cap on the crown of his head instead of pulling it down on his head. It was moving away from us. I don't remember my siblings being with me, so I was so happy that they both said they remember seeing the same thing as I do and verified the experience. They were able to relate more details, as their experiences are a little bit better because they were older. My sister relates that he was greyish, had hair all over his body, had the oblong head, had no clothes on, and was bipedal and moving quickly. My brother remembers that it was very large, estimating over 8 feet, and again, the oblong head. We all remember that he was travelling through the same location and in the same direction. I don't remember what day it was, or when it happened. It must have been either just approaching winter or coming into spring, because the trees were bare. The bush on the hill he was moving on was scarce. There was no snow. If there was, it was small, insignificant patches. We saw him clearly in the daylight. He was not trying to conceal himself in the trees that he ran along the river. He did not stop. None of us remember feeling afraid, and all of us knew what it was. We didn't talk about it, but not because we were ashamed or scared. It was as if we had simply seen a moose or something. Oh, I like that. Like, it's a little bonding thing, like all siblings have seen the same thing. That's pretty cool. McLean Creek knocking experience. It was July 2017. I know this from the pictures I took on that day's quadding trip. Me and my 3 friends took the weekend to scout for moose for the upcoming hunting season. The last night had us camping 3/4 of the way up a cut line just down from McLean Hill. We had just packed our quads and finished setting up for our sleep areas. Mine was a hammock with my sleeping bag in it and a mosquito net over top. The other 2 had Gore-Tex baby bags and slept on the ground. Being our last night, we wanted to have a good meal. It had been hours since we heard our last ATV, so we decided to have a small fire and cook up some deer sausage. We found some dead wood lying around and smashed it on a tree to break it into pieces. Bang, bang, bang. That's when it got weird. About 5 seconds later, there was a loud bang, bang, bang coming from the bottom of the hill. This wasn't an echo, as the sounds were separated by a time of silence. We all looked at each other and smirked that someone at the bottom of the hill was also having a fire and letting us know that they were there. We all knew it was wrong, and there was a fire ban in the place that weekend. We knew that being so far away from the main road and having a small cooking fire, that there was less chance of anyone seeing or smelling responses matched the first set of bangs. I've hunted and quadded that area for the past 20 years and have never experienced anything like that before. Yeah, that's very interesting. Like, that could be anything, but also it's giving Bigfoot for sure. Witness has terrifying encounter near Slave Lake. I was driving down a logging road, bear hunting with my wife and children at approximately 9:30 p.m. when we spotted what appeared to be the rear end of a bear entering the left-hand side of a cut line for a power line that we were driving by. I exited the vehicle and walked down the cut line approximately 50 yards to where the animal had entered the bush line. When I arrived on the right-hand side of the cut line, opposite to where the animal was spotted entering the bush, popular trees of 6 to 8 inches diameter began to shake violently. It was an explosion of movement in the bush next to me. Immediately, I saw two very large hands start to part the trees and bushes with fingers approximately just smaller than a Red Bull can in diameter, and approximately the length of his entire hand. I was face to face with an animal that I can only describe as a Sasquatch. Despite being uphill from where I was standing, I could see the forehead and nose well. However, the mouth was obscured by bush. The head looked to be the width of a basketball, with golf-sized eyes and a large pronounced brow ridge, a large forehead with little hair, a flattened nose with nostrils the size of 2 thumbs side by side, and matted hair. The eyes looked to have dark brown in colour and no whites. However, in the area where the whites were in the eyes would have been purplish tinge of colour. I raised my rifle and it immediately retracted into the forest 20 to 40 yards away from me. My wife was flashing the lights on the truck, having seen the creature, although not that well, from the side view where the truck was parked, signalling to me to come back. My wife described the animal to be hunched over significantly. Although she could not see in detail, she could see the shape in the bush and could see it moving throughout the encounter. I began to make my way back. However, every second step, the trees would shake just 15 yards into the tree line. The tree shaking followed me all the way back to my truck where I got in. We immediately heard a deep whoo sound several times. We heard a bang on the truck roof and sped off into a short distance away, where we pulled over to see what had hit the truck. We found a large dinner-sized plate-sided clump of mud with grass in it, as if it had been torn from the ground. seeker. Friends and I all saw something really tall, like 9 feet tall, peeking out from behind a tree, looking at us as we sat around a fire. We all got the creeps and ran to the car and drove back to my buddy's place. There's a place located in Griffith Woods Park. A friend of mine went to it. It's across the creek, and when we crossed, my friend was the one to spot it first. It was the first footprint we found, and we tried to figure out where the others were located, and enacted out how and which direction this thing was running. The imprint we found was deep into the ground. It landed on the balls of its foot, not the heel, like we do when we bound a sprint. As for the prints, 5 digits about 2.5 inches into the ground. We found 3 more about 5 feet apart from each other. The evidence that baffled us the most were the deer carcasses. We found bones, legs were snapped